Nah, so you haven't met Camille. Camille's like the she's our program coordinator. So sure, she's just helping us out manage like the back things, like if our volumes go crap and other stuff like that, she'll just ping me.
Nice.
So like literally like the house could fall down and I'd still keep talking, but that she's there to remind us like if times go over and whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like she works on our programs team, and like so this is the entire team
Love it.
that I was talking about. I think I gave you a brief history of launch, right? Like you definitely didn't know us before, right? Before
No. Yeah.
KT
Did not know.
Morning. All right. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, go. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bits and Bites. Today we actually have a very special guest and actually plays into the theme of Bits and Bites. We have Emma,
Finally.
aka, I know, right? It took so many episodes to get here. So we have Emma here from aka VancouverFoodie. Emma, how about you quickly introduce yourself and kind of give us some background of who you are?
For sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, also known as VancouverFoodie. That's like my YouTube intro. But what I essentially do is I do content creation for my page, mainly on Instagram. I've sort of dabbled into TikTok, now trying to expand into more long form content for YouTube. But I do all things food, and I've tagged on travel when it's possible. But those two are my passions, my loves, and all things visual and exciting. That's where I'm at.
Honestly, that sounds like the best job ever. Combining food, travel, and then just like social media is all you do. That's amazing.
You're living Jean's dream. Don't give her any ideas.
I actually
Get back to work, Jean.
I actually did try to dabble a bit into like a food page, but I was just like, I can't keep this up. It's hard. Actually, yeah. Can you explain more? Like, how did you get into food influencing or just being an influencer for travel and blogging in general? Like, where did it start?
Yeah, it's a funny question because whenever that comes up, I'm always like, where do I even begin? Because it's always like, do I start from the very moment I like signed into Instagram and created that page and made the login, or do I go that whole like how I even my childhood and my love for food and how that became, that whole extra section before actually logging into that whole social media realm? Because I like to tell people that social media is not the ends, but it's actually the means through which you communicate what you love. And I guess to be more practical about it, I started my page back in my grad year of high school, going into my first year of university. And at that point, my friends, I had my own personal account, and I would be posting naturally like, food photos, and my friends are like, you're making me way too hungry. Let's just make a separate food account for it. So there's like a designated space, and you have those random conversations where someone throws an idea out to you and you're like, why not? Let's try this out. And ironically, back then the word foodie with an IE spelling was not a trend. So that was made available because everyone's like, how did you get that name without the underscore, without the period, the one, the number? And I was like, it was a matter of time, right? And I had no idea that was going to be the way it was going to carry on for the X amount of years, right? Me, little bug here, didn't know. But I just kind of like did it for fun for 4 years. During my undergrad degree, I studied sociology and minored in law and society at UBC for four years. And then I had actually been working part-time at a law firm to kind of potentially pursue law because that's what my dad had probably wanted me to do under those 4 options that you have of an accounting, engineer, some science, or like or lawyer,
like medical.
Right? let me just try to choose one that maybe makes sense and like at least try it out in some sort of extent to see if there's something that I want to pursue. I do love law and justice and that kind of realm, but for me, when I went to work at that law firm, I just got to observe the life of a lawyer, and I was like, I don't think this is the way I want to be helping people. There is obviously a way that it does help people, but maybe not in the way that I desire to be on the front lines of engaging with people on the daily basis and looking like sociology has taught me to look on the bigger picture where everything plays into account. Whereas, the law system, it's like, let's pick and choose. These are the only things that make sense. And I was like, I want to be just like engaged with people all the time. So that's when this came to the forefront. you know, in your grad year of university, you're like, what do I do next with my life? Where am I going to have a job? You know, those big, nice questions that you get. Well, at that point, you know, God had placed on my heart. It was like, you know what, this is scary. There's no one ahead of you, but I have been building this thing for the last 4 years in a very casual, hobby-like way, and you love it. So the fact that this potential industry is going to grow, we have no idea where it's going to go, because literally there's like the word influencer was not a thing, which is weird. Like people were like, oh, they're a blogger, they have a blog on a website, like on the internet, and now the word influencer, social media, all ran TikTokers, it's like a weird words that are very new. But back then I didn't have people to look up to or ask, hey, how do I do this? So it was a lot of like unknown for me. But I knew in my heart, like, this was a moment I listened to my 80-year-old self at the same time, you know, the person on the deathbed being like, this is what, you know, your life, you only have one life to live and you better live it now and like get on that train before it like takes off. And it was also an ode to my younger self who, yes, I did school. Yes, I could get like what the B+, A-, whatever, that like passing grades in that sense of the Asian mindset. But not, I don't like something about the academia or like the structure of reading and writing, the more like traditional ways of doing things. I could do it, but I never like came alive. But when it came to visuals, somehow I would put in so many hours, and yes, I was so exhausted and tired, but I never felt like I was like laboring for something that was not worth it. So it was owed to myself that was like, I've been created so uniquely, and if I take on this opportunity now, like, this is for you. So that's sort of like a long story of how I end up making that decision, and I'm like 8 years into this whole thing, so it's crazy to think about and talk about now.
So before we get too far, I want to make sure that you dropped a lot of knowledge bombs in like that
Sorry.
45-second span. But I want to make sure that listeners here don't miss it, because I think something that's really missing is because it is really easy to look today, and I'm specifically talking to listeners that maybe are in high school or in university or whatever, right? Like I have no idea who the other line listening to this, right? But like a lot of times they can look at your account or X's account, or they'll look at even if they look at Mark Zuckerberg and go, yo, that guy dropped out of college and he did, and he followed his passion, right? But I think what was really important about what you did is you have a minor in law. You thought that was one of the potential routes you go. And I think most importantly, you tried it out, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what's missing a lot today. And in fact, frankly, a lot of the young people that I talk to, that they tell me they want to do a startup. They want to be their own boss because they don't like working for people. I'm like, you've worked for 3 people, right? Like your mom, your dad, and your grandma. So like, you know what? Like, go work at London Drugs for a year, see what it's like facing, I don't know, 10,000 people who are very angry at you that you're making them wear a mask or whatever it is. And then see what you learn from that, right? Like, and I think that's super cool what you did, is because you didn't just be like, well, I'd rather be on my phone posting photos. You actually gave that a shot. So I think kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
And then secondly, like going back to like you kind of leaving college, like was that a hard decision, and were you like all in on it from day one post graduation, I guess?
Yeah, I guess a big pivotal moment I would say is actually my last grad year. There's a big opportunity that God had placed on my lap, like not even kidding. It was, I think, February, and I was graduating in like 2 months later. There's an opportunity there was a big contest going on with the Chinese Restaurant Awards, which I now get to work with on a regular basis. But that time there was a big contest that was like a whole week of campaigning, voting, like Monday to Monday. It was probably even 2 weeks. For me, it sounded like a week or a month or whatever, but I think it was 2 weeks. And the person with the most votes gets to go on a trip to Hong Kong, work with the tourism board, meet all these Michelin star chefs, go behind the scenes, see what it's like, and sort of like the trip of a lifetime for someone who loves Chinese food, wants to like create content around that. And that very last hour, I'm not even kidding, was 100 vote difference between me and the person before me. Wow. And my grad photos was that week. And I remember taking those photos and being like, my face was like this whole time. I had to retake them for it was that bad. But that was like, I think a breaking moment of seeing my community come together and champion me on in a passion that they've seen me love. And I had friends have WhatsApp chats with their like relatives of cousins from Australia. Like I have an auntie awake at that last hour of voting. She was awake in Toronto. She's 3 hours ahead. Okay. And she's calling friends in Hong Kong and like her network. And honestly, that was a huge moment for me to be like, first of all, there's so many people coming, championing me on with this. I want to do a good job of this. And to be able to get onto that trip and to understand that that was a break, like that 1 week or so literally was that moment I realized this is what I want to do. And it was confirmation of next steps for me, right? As much as, yes, it's only a week worth of an opportunity and there's nothing set up for the next part of the year, but I just fell in love with this whole process of like, let's do this. You know what I mean? Like getting to that mindset.
And then from that point on, was it just a matter of like, okay, I got to find a way to make this work?
Yeah. So the next few months was like, okay, what do I do with it? Obviously, it was like, let's push out the content that I had been making on that. So there's obviously a few months of like, let's talk about this whole thing that just happened. But when I decided to do this, like, let's just do this full time, I actually had it was so scary because I was like in this weird empty space of like, okay, what next? Right? Once all that dies down, okay, what next? And it was like a literally 2 to 3 months where I would just maybe like take on any opportunity I have, didn't know how to charge a dime or a cent to the work I was putting in. And my dad, the accountant, of course, Chinese dad with the finances in like mind, was like, if you don't start charging people for the work that you're doing, you're gonna have to go find a 9 to 5. So yes, pressure and these things are good when they push you towards something that makes you like have actionable steps, right? I could either be fearful of like, oh my gosh, like this is the end of be all and stay in that space forever and then like be scared and jump back into that 9 to 5 kind of mindset, or take it as a challenge like, okay, now I have a date by which I need to make decisions on, therefore it pressures me in a good way to be actionable about that. So now I started to break down, these are the hours I've been putting in. Let's just say I go to a restaurant, 1 to 3 hours like minimum. I'm not even kidding. You go eat, you document, you talk to the people there, you go home, you post about it, you filter what you want to do, like go through everything, you edit everything. The time you post it, it's like midnight. I'm not even kidding. Like it's a full day's work. And I was doing that for free. And if I want to do a job and realize my value that I bring, like even if I had 2 people go into a restaurant, it's already like makes up for whatever value they gave me, right? In terms of food they put on my plate. But I had to realize, okay, I have a voice. Yes, I'm a marketing platform at the end of the day, and start to break down logistically, what do I have to offer and what is of value that I can actually pitch to people, and embrace like it's okay for me to say no to certain opportunities because wait for the ones that do truly value what I can bring, and then focus more attention and efforts into those, and then reinvest my ecosystem is like reinvest the money that I make from like brand partnerships or all those opportunities into my everyday organic content, so that I maintain my voice, I maintain my integrity, I still am investing money into like the day-to-day activities. I try to go into restaurants and be like, I'm an everyday person. I don't really tell them I'm going in advance. I order like 1 to 3 dishes, or if I'm with friends, not right now, obviously. Then I do it in a more like natural way where you can see yourself doing the same thing that I'm doing and try to break that barrier. So there's like sort of a working ecosystem and the everyday ecosystem that makes it all work together.
For sure. Do you remember the first time that you gave someone maybe like a quote for your services or whatever? What was that like?
I actually remember it was Robson Street Association. What was that like? It was a very exciting moment for me, in the way that like, oh my gosh, I know Robson Street. I literally walk there almost like every week, you know, like this is huge. And what was scary was like, I don't know how much to charge, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, like people when they're first starting out, and we see that in a lot of passion entrepreneurs, I find.
Yeah.
Because they love what they're doing, and a lot of them started like you, where it was like, oh, I would do this for free. Like you hear that a line a lot, But reality is like nothing's free, right? Like even if you wish to do it for free, someone's paying for your rent and your lights, and et cetera, right? So like I'm always really curious to see like how agonizing it was or wasn't for you to be like, I'm gonna make up a number. So this is for people listening, this is not real, but like let's pretend it was like a $500 contract, right? Like, are you going in super nervous that like people are gonna rip it up, or they're gonna be like, oh, this is so cheap, and you're like, oh crap, I just undersold myself by $3,000. Like what's kind of going on through your mind? I guess try to go back in retro.
Honestly, that's like my life for the last 4 years of doing this full time, is learning the wins and learning through the fails and you know what I mean? Like as an entrepreneur, honestly, you will not know your next steps for like forever, because it's evolving. Each client is different. You're not going to treat a small local business the same as like a big corporation. So you're constantly adapting, stretching yourself. And rather than staying in that space of, oh my gosh, I lost so much from what I could have been, you learn from your next opportunity, right? You have to move on. It's all up, like the entrepreneur life is learning. It's being humble enough to be like, everything is a learning experience. I don't have it all together, and to be open to this. That's why I love having these conversations with people that are like, let's try this unknown space, right? Yeah. It's about creating your own place in that space, but being open to where it leads you. Therefore, it's like, okay, yeah, I mourn for those moments. I probably should have quoted more, but now I can go better and have the language to best navigate the next opportunity, right? It's always not staying in one place. It's always moving and growing, regardless of whatever it looks like.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that's a very common theme when it comes to entrepreneurship. Like every episode that we've had, it's always mentioned at some point, like you're not gonna be perfect like 100% off the bat. Like you got to learn how to work through the failures and pick yourself back up and just be resilient and keep going at it. Like that's the only way you can actually develop. And I think like, you know, a lot of people outside of the industry, they just see the success. They don't see the work. They don't see like the hours. They don't see the like experience that went into this. And actually that kind of leads to my next question then. You know, like when you were building up, you know, your brand of VancouverFoodie and stuff, like what were some of the challenges, like the bigger challenges? Like, you know, obviously one of the challenges would be like finding a price, like a good quotation for the work that you do. But, you know, what were some of the surprising challenges that you didn't kind of expect, like that just completely caught you off guard, if there were any?
Challenges in terms of difficult ones, or like
yeah, sure, let's say difficult ones. Let's start with the difficult
We're not
ones.
talking about when you had a really bad 1 ton or something.
So unforeseen challenges of building up VancouverFoodie.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go through that one.
Let's go with that.
I think an unforeseen challenge, I don't know if this actually answers the question directly, but the first thing that comes to mind is doing this on my own. Mm-hmm. And the only other person I technically work with more on like a formal part-time basis is my YouTube editor. But other than that, every single thing is like, this is like my room, and I'm here most of the time cranking out like ideas on this laptop, working emails. Like, let me put on the hat today. I'm the accountant. Hi, I am the manager. Hi, I'm the content creator. Hi, I'm this. Because normally, you know, when you're in the mindset of like, I'm just doing this for the sake of the hobby, it's a different mindset. But when you transition into it, let's do this let's take this for real and do this as a more structured work format, then you start to realize there's more than just let's do it. You know, so the biggest challenges is all the other working elements that come into making this a full-time gig for me, right? Because I could have kept it as a side hobby, let me go pursue my 9 to 5, and this is what it is. But to transition into that challenge of like, oh my goodness, I wasn't trained as an entrepreneur in school. I was a sociologist. Like, nothing about that really gave me practical steps. I was not in solder. I was not in like a business school of any sense. But like I guess sociology, the one thing shout at sociology is honestly like helping me think big picture, understanding that everything is not just a singular matter. So that has helped me to understand that this job comes with a lot, but I did not know what that meant when I got into it, if that makes sense.
Do you find that like anyone has kind of like when you kind of explain what you do full time, do you find that anyone kind of has these like misconceptions? They're like, oh my God, you get to eat food? Like, that's amazing. Like, like, what, like, I don't know, like, how do you deal with like misconceptions about your job a lot? Like, do you just play it off and just be like, yeah, no, like it's great? Or do you kind of have to break it down for them to be like, no, this is a real, you know, job? Like, because we have this idea of like what an influencer is. And I don't know, I think it's very divided on like people saying, oh, influencing is not a real job. But like, even just from what you said, like you spend hours just to get like a couple content posts out, right? After going to a restaurant. Like, yeah, do you want to like elaborate a little bit more? Like what, I guess like your general reaction is to people asking about, you know, what it is to be an influencer and stuff, or misconceptions that they had.
It's funny because you even talk about the word influencer. I tend to not want to explain it as such, but the reality is that only because it has a negative connotation, right? Like I'm like, oh, I'm an influencer, that's my job. It like makes me sound like, oh, you know, we all cringe a bit, only because we only see the good parts, and that is literally our job, is to make it look seamless and effortless, right? Like what you see is probably 5 to 10% of what goes on behind the scenes. It is every job, right? Let's talk about so many jobs out there. Like nobody sees the behind the scenes. That's what I love about TikTok and social media, and how we're moving into that place of like, let's expose the behind the scenes more. Let's show how we even made this photo. Let's see the reality outside of the Instagram, right? But a lot of misconceptions about being an influencer, if we're going that route to help people understand where I'm at, is that okay, let's break down the word influencer first, okay? The word influencer is somebody who has a say or means to quote unquote influence or push somebody in a certain direction, right? And it's essentially saying somebody has a voice in that place. And as I am a food or travel influencer, when I talk about these things in that place, people listen to what I say, or they want to give kind of credibility to it's saying I have credibility in a sense in that place. But I do want to break down the reality that everyone is an influencer in their own ways, in their own spaces, even if it means you have an influence in your friend group. You have an influence with the 1,000 followers you have in your peer group. We all have influence. It just means that for me, I have a bigger arena of people I influence. I guess is what I could expand that to. But with that, as an influencer, I would say, like, I have to understand the voice that I have. Like, I have a responsibility to take into account of people are actually spending money on the things I'm telling them to go try or to go do. And I need to do my due diligence of doing a good job of that, because it could backfire in one moment, right? If I do something wrong, there's a lot of pressure on my back in terms of like, how do I do this right? Or there's a lot of working things in my brain of how do I even create the best way to tell this story or to promote this restaurant, right? There's a lot of behind the scenes mental effort, physical effort, emotional effort, everything, right? I think it's good to actually normalize the fact that the creative space is becoming a place where money is actually being put into, because back then, or I guess still now, the 9 to 5, the traditional jobs, that's where money's like, that's where money is put where
value, right?
it is valued. Correct.
Yeah.
So I like to champion the creative space so much. The fact that it's growing into a place where money is starting to be put into it, I'm like, let's do that, because not everybody is made to do certain 5 jobs in the world. Like if we all were doctors, if we were all lawyers, like life is not as robust.
Yeah.
So it's like learning to appreciate how we've all been created differently, right? So I don't know where that went, but that's sort of
Awesome. There's one word you used earlier that I found really interesting, and it was integrity, right? Like you talked a lot about how when you're choosing who you want to work with, you want to make sure that you maintain your integrity. Can you kind of just expand a bit on what that means? I guess specific to your space, but I think it can be relevant regardless if you're a fashion influencer or whatever that industry is, right? But what does integrity have to do with how you run, I guess, your business?
Yeah. Integrity as the backbone or core value of what I do. Um, it first of all helps me understand that like I'm impacting humans. You know what I mean? Like these people, humans have feelings. They have thoughts. They can make up their own opinions. They can be easily influenced in a way, right? Like for me to understand that what I say matters to them is huge, right? Like even if I go eat, and I think one example of me understanding that the integrity that I need to have and meaning what I say is when I went out to go eat and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're Vancouver Foodie. Me and my boyfriend love your page. We literally visit it once a week to go try out something new." I think that was like a major moment for me to realize, like, I just met a human person that follows my page. And I don't even realize that people are going to my page at that point, like a few years back that happened, that people literally see it as a place to find happiness, to look forward to something, right? And if I ever, yes, I'm an entity and I need to make money and all that stuff, but if I ever try to pivot my backbone to something else that's nothing with integrity, then it can fall short so easily, right? I take the human part of it. I take out people's emotions, feelings out of it. And then if I make it all about myself, then it just really, it will crumble within days.
As a funny side note, I think you have no idea how many times I've just been like late night Instagramming. We all do it, right? And then I roll on one of your posts and I'm like, dang it, I'm hungry again. Like it's like 1:30 at night. I'm like, why you do this to me? And you're not even selling anything at that point because everything's closed, right? You're just straight up hungry. So there's another one to add to your arsenal.
Thank you.
Don't post too late.
Awesome.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I guess kind of like the other questions we wanted to kind of go into then is like, where do you see, because I think nowadays in present day, like you were there from like the beginning before, as you mentioned, influencer was a thing, before foodie was a thing. So over the years, like you must have seen so many changes in this industry. Like what were some of the more significant ones that you saw, and like, anything else that you wanted to comment about in terms of the industry like developing, and maybe even go into like, where do you kind of see the future of food blogging and travel blogging going, especially with COVID being a huge, I guess, deterrence right now in the industry?
Yeah. So, first of all, food is a universal language. I would say, like, it's an essential daily necessity. You have like minimum 2 to 3 meals a day. So I feel like food as a medium will be carried out regardless, and food blogging or social media as the means to get people excited about it, I think will always be there. It just takes different shapes and forms over the years. Like before it was a blog on a website, now it was Instagram, YouTube, now TikTok, right? It's still there. It just looks a little different maybe from the other. Travel, obviously no one's doing it now, but when people are allowed to travel, you don't even realize how much people are gonna be Googling that thing up left and right? So it's also about like think about what people desire at the end of the day. So food and travel, I feel like as things or subjects, they will be always of interest. But I would say talking about blogging or sharing your voice, like I'm going to talk about social media a bit more. Like it has definitely moved into the more video content, interactive, inviting the person into the experience. That's why honestly, I love what I do, because I get to get people excited about something, and I'm so grateful to be in a position where I get access to things that people don't get to. But for me to be an entryway for people to see those things, that's what gets me excited, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's like the the capacity of what it could be is like honestly endless, because technology, we've already seen what it can do within like 10 years, within 2 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. And let's go nerdy for a second. Like you, when you talk about when you first started, was it mostly written? Like, did you start with a blog or did you start with the Instagram?
So I've never had a blog on a web. I
Okay.
do not like writing.
And that's fascinating too, but we'll put a pin on that part. but yeah, so obviously it started with visual and imaging. And
Yeah.
if you go on Vancouver Foodie's page now, you have YouTube set up. You've been doing a ton of TikToks and reels, and I don't know if you do like Twitter stories or whatever. But like where did you know to react and go, okay, I got to make this change, I got to evolve, and probably in your sake, I got to learn, I got to relearn, right? Because you got really good at taking photos or making food look a different way, but now you're like, now I got to show my face more, now I got to talk through things, now I got to do cooking recipe, like, I'm not going to dive into what you do, but like obviously you had to make a lot of changes. Were those easy decisions for you to make, or was like, how did you recognize that I need to be on TikTok, or I need to build a YouTube presence, hire an editor, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's through experience for me to recognize that TikTok is where Instagram was when it first started. People had no idea the potential it had, but the fact that TikTok has grown so much within the short period means that it's like people need to get on it right away. We all think about like, oh, it's for the younger generation, all that stuff. It's like actually not a lot. There's a lot of people that are creating content that are not of the younger generation. They just happen to be the ones consuming the information, but the people that have a voice are little people that are older and have experience in that field, right? So I think because I've been in that social media realm for the past 4 to 8 years, 4 I always say like professionally, and then 4 is like a hobby, but 8 altogether, I've been able to observe how things are, and therefore I can pick it up more easily. You know what I mean? So I've like seen something similar to it, so therefore I can just translate into a different platform. YouTube is like a totally different beast. I feel like it's like a Google search engine. It's long form content. It's so different from Instagram because it's been like, let me post a photo, let me post a video under 1 minute, like versus horizontal content. Like I think YouTube is like a scary beast for me to tackle, to be honest. Whereas TikTok is more like easy to transition because it is vertical format. You're doing the 1 minute less. So yeah.
So what advice, in moving this over, what advice would you have for brands? Like they could be startups or they could be, I don't know, a fashion company. Like what would you recommend they do if they're trying to get into the space? Like let's go with smaller companies, just because I know if you had a budget of 100 people, you'd probably tackle things very differently. But if you're working with like a small company, or even maybe suggestions you've had to other restaurants you've worked with, like where should they start? What are some simple things that can get them on a path to build more of a reach?
100%. So first is TikTok is the platform you should probably invest your time in, just because of their way of algorithm, can send it to a few random people, and then if people like it there and engage there, it'll just naturally send it out to more. It's just a more friendly means for your content to be made known. Whereas I feel like Instagram is more of like, you should have a brand presence where people are going to search you up and see if you have an Instagram page, and how often is it updated? Is it been updated like 3 months ago, which seems like you're not there? Or if you've posted consistently every week, then they know you're accessible. They can DM you. That's the safe space of interaction and like more closer engagement. So I would say those two are the platforms like any small business, or any business for that matter of fact, should be getting on to in those ways.
And then along those same lines, like if someone's, let's say, in your space, how should they tackle this kind of beast of utilizing influencers? Or I think a much better way to say word it is thought leaders, frankly speaking.
Nice.
Just because when you're talking about experts in food or experts in tech or experts in whatever, how should companies be utilizing that to actually build their brand alongside? Like, let's say they've opened up a TikTok, they're doing YouTube, maybe they're good writers and they started a blog, whatever. How can they also tackle influencer marketing and start to dabble in this realm and like from, I guess you have a unique vantage point because you're on the receiving end of it, but like how do they, use their time spent and in some case budget spend?
Right. I think first of all, it's understanding the place that influencers or thought leaders have on people. It's like, let's position to help someone understand or break it down a bit more. Influencers, thought leaders are almost equivalent to a friend, right? Here, say, let's see the product being used. Whereas if you're just putting a billboard out there, here's my ad, it seems like there's such a far reach of like, you are the big product, you are the big company, and here's me user. Let's hopefully like you get influenced by this far off thing. Whereas if you work with influencers or bloggers or of that sort, it's like, hey, now someone has used it, someone I trust is using it. I've seen it work with them. I know that what they say is something I can trust. Then you are investing sort of in that kind of realm, right? But it just happens to be a person or a friend that has a lot of friends.
Fair.
If we're bringing it down into those simpler terms, right?
Yeah. And we talk a lot about word of mouth, especially with early stage startups, and when you're trying to get that initial traction. Influencer marketing can help a bit, to say the least, for sure. So kind of to slide things over, what do you think of this concept? And this might again be mind blowing to you. Is I know there's going to be people listening, and if not people listening, then followers that are looking at you and going, "I want to be Emma in the future." You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to just buff your shoes or anything.
No worries.
I think that's a reality.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for people like that are looking at you as not an influencer of food, but you're a trailblazer in this industry that's going to shape their next 10 to 50 years?
Yeah, for sure. Wow.
It got heavy real fast there.
That's funny because just the other day, like a young girl who's probably like grade 9, she's on my praise team, worship team, and she was telling me like, oh, I've planned my next steps and I want to be a lawyer. And that has nothing to do with me going to law before, but she's like, I want to be a lawyer, but I've always considered like, what is it like to be Vancouver foodie? It was like this cute like moment of, oh my goodness, these, I could be in a position of someone that they look up to. And back then, I wish I had someone like that to look up to, but I didn't have somebody. But to be in a position to be that somebody for someone is crazy, but a privilege. Some words of advice for people that want to be in my position. I like to start off with the basics of embracing who you are as a unique human being, because we all are combinations of so many different experiences and, nature, nurture, that kind of thing. And there's no one else in the world that is you, right? Which is mind-blowing at the same time. But to embrace who you are as a person allows you to go into because social media, I'm just saying, social media is the means, right? It's the vehicle to make your voice known. So you have to know what your voice is to begin with, because people are naturally drawn to things that are sure, that are concrete. And if you're not really sure of yourself, and actually it's funny because obviously you don't have to have it all together. I'm not asking you your life is perfect and you know what you want in life, but it's to understand who you are as a person. That's the most basic part of it. And then for me, it's a second piece of advice is not to let fear stop you from doing the next step, right? Because as entrepreneurs or as someone who is constantly creating and pumping out things, you just have to be like showing up consistently rather than staying stagnant where you are. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to have good days and bad days, but it's just a natural part of it, right? We put up so many expectations for ourselves. And it's funny because when I think about it, I could say like my Asian parents, sure, they have expectations, but I actually don't think that their expectations are as intense of the expectations that I have for myself, right? So it's being realistic of whose expectations am I really giving value to and voice in my life, and being mindful of where those are coming from, and making sure like those things do not necessarily inhibit you from being your best self and showing up for others in that way.
Amazing. That was a lot better than my answer of you should get a TikTok account.
Just get on TikTok. It's the new hype.
Just get a TikTok and scale up.
Yeah. That would be the easy one.
Yeah, it's definitely more in depth. And I guess kind of like tracking back a bit to, being yourself and having kind of people drawn to you kind of actually leads to our last question then that we have here. So are there any people that you look up to that kind of bring out their authenticity that you feel drawn to? And I guess to be more elaborate, if you could choose 3 of those people, who would you have? And with the intention of creating your ultimate dream team. So they could be kind of like, celebrities, it can be dead historians, it can be completely imaginary people. Let's say
had people suggest cartoons.
Yeah, cartoon characters are great. So yeah. What do you think those top 3 people would be for you?
It's funny because I was like, dream team. Would that be like dream team of who I get to work with, or like in general?
Everything's up for interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First one, obviously, Jesus Christ. The only reason why I am in the unique position that I am is honestly, I'm an everyday type of girl, and I'm thinking about it. I'm just like, I'm a Canadian Chinese girl who loves food and ends up just so happens that I have people listening to me, but I'm just an everyday ordinary girl at the end of the day. But Jesus allows me to be in a position where he makes himself known. Like, I get to be in relationship with the creator of the universe who loves us and sees us. And for me to kind of help others see that in themselves is honestly the end goal of what I get to do, is empower people to find joy in the little things, to help them look forward to the daily life, little moments, right? And to know that there's extraordinary means to do this ordinary life, that it looks ordinary, but it can be extraordinary is what I'm trying to say. So dream teams have Jesus on my team. He already is on my team in many ways, but like he makes me dream things that I never thought is possible for me. And second of all, another person is Guy Fieri. Literally grew up midnight. Okay, now you watch my page midnight. He is who I watched at midnight as a child. Okay, Guy Fieri is like Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives is my love ultimate dream gig if I ever were to have one, because he's literally eating food. He talks about it. He's exciting. He's energetic. He looks hilarious. I don't know. But I think he allowed me to imagine myself. So for him to be on my team and be a mentor, that would be amazing. Third, lastly, I was like, oh, if I were to like have a production team, the Netflix Chef's Table filmmakers would be wonderful.
Oh, yes.
It would make my life look super epic and do things that I know I can't do for myself. So that was like a random last one, but yeah.
Anyone, just give me one.
Yeah, I think those 3 would be my dream team from what I could imagine now.
Awesome. Appreciate the answer. So we're just about wrapping up this episode now, but before we let you go, we've had an amazing conversation today. Just wanted to let you plug yourself. If people don't follow you for some reason, where can they find you on all your platforms?
So if you don't follow me yet on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, Facebook-ish, and I'm on Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter, you can find me via VancouverFoodie, no underscore, no period, no ones, just VancouverFoodie.
IE, right?
IE, Foodie with an IE.
Foodie with an IE. So there you have it. Jean, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Emma, for taking the time. And honestly, like after getting to hear a little bit more and learning more in depth, like I'm not gonna lie, I'm like really jealous. I'm a huge foodie at heart too, Sam knows. So it's amazing what you get to do.
we find that whenever we have guests on here, Jean just wants to do their job. She just wants to work with them after. She never ends the episode with like, wow, it's really nice working with Sam and Camille and Ray.
I just want to do your job.
Just take me with you. I'll be
it's fine. We have a lot of fun here too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It looks like she has like a gamer setup, so I feel like
oh, definitely do. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Emma. And so for those that are listening to this episode, make sure to check out Vancouver Foodie on her social platforms, and hopefully we'll see you guys all on the next episode. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.